A subtle shift of her sleeve was all it took. As she served his coffee, the fabric slid back, unveiling a dark secret she desperately fought to keep hidden, a grim collection of bruises. The maid stammered a flimsy excuse, blaming her own clumsiness, but her eyes screamed a different story, a tale of pure terror that the city's most powerful man, who noticed everything, read with chilling clarity. In that silent heartbeat, a decision was forged. She was now under his protection, and he would let nothing obstruct that promise. Lorenzo Duca lived by a simple creed: there are no coincidences. At 6:47 a.m., he sat in his study, the Chicago skyline his backdrop, dissecting financial reports that would numb the ordinary mind. But Lorenzo was anything but ordinary. He was a master of tells. The slight tremor in a voice during tense negotiations, the split-second delay before a handshake, the way a person's eyes darted when they spun a lie. So, when Maria Lopez entered his office with his morning espresso, he knew instantly that something was deeply wrong. Her sleeve wasn't just pulled down, it was intentionally stretched over her knuckles, her hand clutching it as if trying to hold herself together. "Good morning, Mr. Duca," she said, her voice a mere whisper. It always was. In the 3 months she had worked for him, he had never heard her speak above a murmur. "Morning, Maria." He watched her move toward his desk, her actions careful and rehearsed. She placed the small porcelain cup down with both hands, and that's when it happened. The sleeve slipped, for a second, maybe two, but it was long enough. Dark purple bruises coiled around her wrist like grotesque bracelets. Some were fresh, a deep, angry violet. Others were fading to that sickly yellow-green that signaled they were days old. His eyes captured the image before she yanked her sleeve down, and he saw her freeze. She knew he had seen. "Maria," he said calmly, placing his pen on the desk. "Sit down." "Oh, I should get back to..." "Sit." It wasn't a loud command. Lorenzo never needed to be loud, but something in his tone compelled people to listen. She sank into the leather chair across from him, looking as though she wished to vanish into it. "What happened to your wrist?" "Nothing, sir. I'm just clumsy." She forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "I bumped it on the cabinet door yesterday while cleaning." Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, studying her. Maria was 28, according to her file. Petite with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and brown eyes that rarely made direct contact. She was meticulous, quiet, and never asked questions, the exact qualities his housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, had praised. But Mrs. Chun hadn't mentioned the fear, because that's what Lorenzo saw now. Not embarrassment, raw, authentic fear. "Both wrists?" he asked gently, seeing how she was unconsciously rubbing her other arm. Maria's face went pale. "Ah, yes, I'm very clumsy." "Show me." "Mr. Duca, really, I'm fine." "Maria." He kept his voice soft but firm. "Show me." Her hands trembled as she slowly pulled back her sleeves. Both wrists were marred by the same marks, finger-shaped bruises. Someone had grabbed her, hard, and recently. A cold sensation settled in Lorenzo's chest. He had built an empire in the shadows of Chicago. He had done things he wasn't proud of, made decisions that stole his sleep. But he had rules, lines he didn't cross. One of those lines was simple: you don't hurt people who can't fight back. Someone had hurt Maria. Someone had grabbed this woman with enough force to leave marks days old, and she was terrified enough to lie about it. Who did this? Nobody, I told you. Maria. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to understand something. You work in my house, under my roof. That means you're under my protection. Do you understand?" She looked at him with those frightened, wide eyes, and for a moment he thought she might confess. Her lips parted slightly as she weighed the options in her head. Then she stood up abruptly. "I really should get back to work. The breakfast dishes." "Maria." But she was already backing toward the door. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Duca. I promise I'll be more careful." And then she was gone, practically fleeing from his office. Lorenzo sat in silence, his gaze fixed on the door she'd closed. Then he picked up his phone and called the one person in his house he trusted implicitly. "Mrs. Chun, my office now." 3 minutes later, his housekeeper appeared, Patricia Chun had served the Duca family for 30 years. At 62, she was as sharp as a blade and one of the few people unafraid to tell Lorenzo when he was being a fool. "You called," she said dryly. "Maria, tell me about her." Mrs. Chun's expression immediately shifted to one of concern. "What happened?" "She's hurt. Bruises on both wrists, finger marks. She's terrified, and she's lying." "God." Mrs. Chun sank into the chair Maria had just left. "I didn't know. I swear, Lorenzo, I had no idea. What do you know about her personal life?" "Not much. She's very private. I know she was married, but she's divorced. She needed this job badly when she applied. I could see it. Good references from a family on the North Shore who moved away." "Why did she need work so badly?" Mrs. Chun shrugged. "Divorce is costly. She mentioned she was staying with her sister, trying to get back on her feet." Lorenzo drummed his fingers on the desk. "Find out where she goes after work. Have Marco do it. Be discreet. I want to know where she lives, who she interacts with, and if anyone is harassing her." "You think it's the ex-husband?" "I think someone grabbed her hard enough to leave bruises, and she's too afraid to report it." He met Mrs. Chun's eyes. "Nobody touches my people, Patricia. Nobody." Mrs. Chun nodded slowly, recognizing the protective, almost fatherly instinct that emerged when someone under his care was threatened. For all his dark dealings, Lorenzo Duca had a code. "I'll talk to her," Mrs. Chun offered. "Maybe she'll open up to another woman." "Do that, but be gentle. She's already on edge." Lorenzo turned back to his computer, but his thoughts were elsewhere. "And Patricia, have security pull the camera footage from outside the property. Every angle, going back 2 weeks." "You think someone followed her here?" "I think," Lorenzo said quietly, "that Maria Lopez is running from something, and I'm going to find out what." After Mrs. Chun left, Lorenzo sat alone, the financial reports forgotten. Outside, Chicago was coming to life. People heading to work, living their ordinary lives, oblivious to the darker currents flowing beneath the city's surface. Somewhere in this city, someone had hurt Maria, had made her afraid to ask for help. Lorenzo picked up his phone again, this time calling his head of security. "Tony, I need a background check. Run quietly. Maria Lopez, employed here. I want everything. Where she lived, who she was married to, any police reports, restraining orders, anything that could explain why she's so terrified." "How fast do you need it?" Lorenzo looked at the closed office door, remembering the fear in Maria's eyes. "Yesterday." He ended the call and leaned back. Outside, the sun was rising over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside Lorenzo's chest, something much darker was rising too. Someone had made a grave mistake. They had harmed someone under his protection, and Lorenzo Duca always ensured that mistakes were corrected. Tony Messina, Lorenzo's head of security for 12 years, was a man who tracked down thieves, neutralized threats, and had once rooted out a traitor in the organization before real damage was done. But digging up information on a frightened Maid was new territory. By noon, he was at Lorenzo's study door with a manila folder. "That was quick," Lorenzo said, gesturing him in. "It wasn't hard to find." Tony dropped the folder on the desk, his expression grim. "You're not going to like this." Lorenzo opened it. Inside was a photo of a man in a Chicago Police Department uniform. Broad-shouldered, sandy blonde hair, and cold blue eyes that didn't match his smile. "Officer Derek Mitchell," Tony said. "Married Maria Lopez 6 years ago. Divorce was finalized 8 months back. He's stationed at the 14th District. Patrol officer, but he has connections. His uncle is a deputy chief." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. 2 domestic disturbance calls to their old address in the last year. Both times, Maria refused to press charges. Neighbors reported hearing shouting. Then she filed for divorce and got a restraining order. Tony pointed to another document. "It expired 3 weeks ago. She didn't renew it." "Why not?" "That's the million-dollar question." Tony crossed his arms. "A contact at the courthouse told me she tried. Mitchell showed up with a sharp lawyer, likely funded by the uncle. They argued she had no new evidence of harassment. The judge denied the extension. That cold anger settled deeper in Lorenzo. So she's legally exposed. Yeah, and boss, it gets worse. Tony showed Lorenzo a photo from a public social media profile. It depicted Derek Mitchell at a bar, arm around another officer, both raising beers. He's close with a dozen cops in his district. If Maria tried to report him now, the complaint would vanish. They protect their own. Lorenzo closed the folder with deliberate care. Where does she live? An apartment in Pilsen, sharing with her sister Rosa. The building has no security. Maria takes the bus to and from work. Tony paused. You want me to put someone on her? Not yet. I don't want to spook her further. Lorenzo stood, walking to the window. But I want cameras watching that bus stop, and I want to know if Mitchell goes anywhere near her. Already on it. I have Marco reviewing the gate footage now. If Mitchell has been following her here, we'll know by tonight. After Tony left, Lorenzo tried to work, but his thoughts kept returning to Maria. Somewhere in his house, she was cleaning, trying to be invisible, while bearing bruises from a man sworn to protect and serve. The irony was not lost on him. Lorenzo Duca, a man who lived outside the law, was more repulsed by a cop's abuse than most of the city's so-called upstanding citizens would ever be. Around 2 p.m., Mrs. Chun found him in his study. I spoke with her, she said quietly. Or I tried. And she's terrified, Lorenzo. I brought her tea, sat with her in the kitchen, told her this was a safe place. Mrs. Chun's voice was heavy with frustration. She thanked me, said she was fine, then watched her hands tremble so violently she nearly dropped the cup. Did she say anything useful? She mentioned she's been having trouble sleeping, hearing noises outside her apartment at night. She tried to laugh it off, blaming the loud neighborhood, but Mrs. Chun shook her head. That girl is being stalked and she knows it. Lorenzo's phone buzzed. It was a text from Marco, his lead surveillance tech. You need to see this, coming up. 2 minutes later, Marco entered with a laptop. He was young, 26, with a nervous energy that belied his invaluable skills. He placed the laptop on Lorenzo's desk and played a security clip. This is from 3 days ago, Marco said. 6:47 p.m. Maria's leaving through the side gate. The footage showed Maria walking out, clutching her purse. She glanced around nervously before heading toward the bus stop. Watch, Marco said, fast-forwarding 30 seconds. A dark blue sedan rolled slowly past the gate. The driver wore sunglasses despite the evening hour. And though the angle was poor, Lorenzo could make out sandy blonde hair. That's him, Tony said from the doorway, having entered unheard. Ran the plates. Registered to Derek Mitchell. He's following her from work, Mrs. Chun breathed. That son of a... There's more, Marco cut in, clicking to another file. Yesterday, same time, same car, same slow crawl past the property. This time, a different camera caught the car stopping at the bus stop where Maria waited. She saw it, and even in the grainy footage, Lorenzo saw her posture change. Shoulders hunched, head down, hands gripping her purse like a lifeline. The car idled there for 3 minutes while Maria stood frozen. Then it drove off. He's not touching her, Marco explained. He's being smart, just watching, reminding her he knows where she is, when she leaves, where she goes. It's intimidation. It's terrorism, Lorenzo said coldly. He's hunting her. Mrs. Chun stood abruptly, her composure cracking. We have to do something. We can't just let this happen. We're not going to. Lorenzo looked at Tony. I want to know everything about Derek Mitchell. Where he lives, where he drinks, his friends, his schedule, his habits, his secrets. His uncle is a deputy chief, Tony reminded him. If we move against a cop, I know what he is. Lorenzo's voice was quiet but carried immense weight, which is why we're going to be very, very careful. We're not going to touch him. Not yet. Then what's the plan? Lorenzo looked back at the frozen image of Maria, small and scared, while a predator circled. We're watching, we're learning, and we're documenting everything. He turned to Marco. I want cameras on every route Maria takes. I want footage of every time Mitchell follows her, watches her, intimidates her. I want dates, times, and locations. Building a case? Tony asked. Building ammunition, Lorenzo corrected. Mitchell thinks he's untouchable because of that badge. He thinks Maria is alone. He is wrong. Mrs. Chun paused at the door. What do we tell Maria? Nothing, not yet, Lorenzo replied. If we tell her we're watching him, she'll panic. She needs to act normal, keep her routine. She's suffering, Mrs. Chun protested. I know, Lorenzo's voice softened. But if we move too fast, we could make things worse. Mitchell is staying just inside the law. We need him to make a mistake. After they left, Lorenzo sat alone with the security footage playing on the laptop. He watched Maria's frightened posture, how she tried to make herself small. Derek Mitchell thought he could hurt someone with impunity because he wore a badge. He was about to learn that some shadows have teeth. That evening, Lorenzo sat in his private study, a glass of untouched whiskey beside him, the ice long since melted. His eyes were glued to the monitors Marco had set up, showing various camera angles of the property and nearby streets. At 6:43 p.m., his phone rang. It was Marco. Boss, you need to come to the security room, now. Lorenzo didn't waste time with questions. He took the elevator to the basement level, to the command center most of his staff didn't know existed. Marco and Tony were there, their faces grim. 3 large monitors displayed paused footage. We went back further, Marco said. 2 weeks of footage from every camera we have. Plus, I accessed the traffic cams near the property and her bus stop. Show me, Lorenzo said. Marco played the first video. This is from 11 days ago. The footage showed a bus stop 3 blocks from the mansion. Maria stood alone, checking her phone. Then the blue sedan appeared, pulling to the curb. Derek Mitchell got out, still in his police uniform. Maria saw him and immediately started walking away, fast. Mitchell followed. Watch, Marco said quietly. The traffic camera captured what happened next. Mitchell caught up to Maria, grabbing her arm and spinning her around. Even without audio, Lorenzo could see her pleading with him. Mitchell leaned in close, his grip tight on her arm. When she tried to pull away, he grabbed her other arm. Lorenzo's hands clenched into fists. The confrontation lasted maybe 90 seconds. Then Mitchell suddenly released her, got back in his car, and drove off. Maria stood on the sidewalk, trembling, rubbing her arms. The bruises, the ones Lorenzo had seen that morning. This is where they came from. There's more, Tony said. Show him Tuesday. Marco switched to another file. Same bus stop, different angle, this time in the rain. Maria, holding an umbrella, was almost running. Mitchell's car was already waiting. He got out and intercepted her, blocking her path. She tried to go around him, but he moved with her, backing her against the bus shelter. He jabbed a finger toward her face as he spoke, threatening her. A bus pulled up. Maria saw her chance and darted around him, practically leaping onto it. Mitchell watched it drive away, then returned to his car. And yesterday, Marco said, his voice tight with anger, this is the worst one. The third video showed Maria leaving the property. She was on her phone, not paying attention. Mitchell appeared on foot, catching her by surprise. Maria gasped and backed against the gate. He advanced, trapping her. This time, he didn't just grab her. He had both hands on her shoulders, shoving her against the iron bars. He was in her face, so close she had to turn her head away. Tears streamed down her face. The confrontation lasted longer this time, 3 or 4 minutes. At one point, his hand moved to her throat, not choking, but resting there. A threat, a reminder of his power. Finally, an elderly man walking his dog appeared. Mitchell immediately stepped back, his entire demeanor changing. He nodded politely to the stranger and walked away casually. Maria slid down the gate to the sidewalk, her body racked with sobs. Something inside Lorenzo cracked. The professional distance, the cold calculation that made him so effective, burned away, replaced by pure rage. Turn it off, he said quietly. The room was silent save for the hum of the computers. He's been doing this for weeks, Tony said. Maybe longer. These are just the times we caught on camera. Lorenzo turned to his security chief. He's a cop. Yeah, protected by his badge, by his uncle, by the whole damn system. And Maria can't report him because they'll bury it, Lorenzo stated. She can't get another restraining order. She can't run because he knows where she works. His voice was deadly calm. "She's trapped." "That's about the size of it," Tony agreed. Lorenzo walked to the monitors, studying the frozen image of Maria's terrified face. "Did you make copies?" "Triple backed up, encrypted drives, the works." "Good." Lorenzo turned back to them. "Get me everything on Derek Mitchell, not just public records, the real story. Where does his money come from? A patrol cop shouldn't be driving a car that nice. Where does he drink? Who are his friends? Does he have debts? Secrets? You want us to investigate a cop?" Marco asked carefully. "I want you to investigate a predator who happens to wear a badge." Lorenzo's eyes were like ice. "Mitchell thinks he's untouchable. He thinks because he's got an uncle in the department and a uniform, he can terrorize a woman without consequences. So what's the move?" Tony asked. Lorenzo looked back at the screen, at Maria's tear-stained face, at the hand on her throat. "We're going to show him that a badge doesn't make him invincible." "Boss?" Tony's eyes widened. "It's a metaphor, Tony." Lorenzo's voice softened slightly. "I'm not going to eliminate a cop. That would bring heat we can't afford, and more importantly, it would terrify Maria even more." "Then what?" Lorenzo smiled, a smile devoid of warmth. "We're going to do something worse. We're going to dismantle everything that makes him feel powerful, his reputation, his protection, his badge." He moved toward the door. "A man like Mitchell, his identity is wrapped up in that uniform. We take that away, and he's nothing." "That could take time," Marco noted. "Then we'd better get started." Lorenzo opened the door. "I want a full report by morning. Everything you can find. Financials, associates, habits, dirt. If Derek Mitchell has skeletons in his closet, I want to know where they're buried." After they turned back to their computers, Lorenzo took the elevator back to his study. The sun had set, and the city lights twinkled like fallen stars. Somewhere out there, Maria was in her shared apartment, scared. And somewhere else, Derek Mitchell was probably having a beer with his cop buddies, feeling invincible. Lorenzo picked up his phone and made a call. "Consigliere," he said when Frank Russo answered. "We need to talk. I have a situation that requires your particular expertise." "How delicate?" "We're going after a police officer." There was a long pause. "I'm listening." "Good," Lorenzo said, "because we're going to need to be very, very careful." He hung up and stared out at the city. Derek Mitchell had made a crucial mistake. He'd hurt someone under Lorenzo Duca's protection. Now it was time to teach him what happens when you cross the wrong shadow. The next morning, Lorenzo found Maria in the library, dusting bookshelves with robotic precision. She moved like she was trying not to disturb the silence itself. "Maria," he said softly from the doorway, "can you come to my office, please?" Her entire body went rigid. The duster fell from her hand. I'm not finished here, Mr. Duca. I can come later if... Now, please." He kept his voice gentle but firm. "It's important." She followed him down the hall like someone walking to their own execution, her knuckles white from clasping her hands. In his office, he gestured to the chair she'd fled from 2 days ago. "Sit down, Maria." She perched on the very edge, ready to bolt. Lorenzo closed the door and leaned against his desk, trying to appear less intimidating. "I'm going to ask you something," he said quietly, "and I need you to be honest with me. Can you do that?" Her eyes were fixed on her lap. "Yes, sir." "Who's hurting you?" "Nobody. I told you, I'm just... Maria." He waited until she looked up, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "I know you're scared. I know you think telling the truth will make things worse, but I need you to trust me." "I can't," she whispered. "I can't talk about it." "Why not?" "Because," her voice broke, "talking about it makes him angrier. Every time I've tried to get help, he just gets worse." There it was. Him. "Your ex-husband," Lorenzo stated. It wasn't a question. Maria's head snapped up, fear flooding her face. "How did you..." "It's my business to know things." He moved his own chair closer, sitting so they were at eye level. "Derek Mitchell, Chicago PD, 14th District. You were married for 5 years. Divorced 8 months ago. She started crying then, silent tears streaming down her face. Please don't get involved. Please. You don't understand what he's capable of. Tell me. He'll hurt you, or he'll have his friends arrest you on fake charges, or Maria. Lorenzo's voice was calm, almost soothing. Look at me. She did, her face wet with tears. I am not afraid of Derek Mitchell, but I need to understand what's been happening. Can you tell me? For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, like a dam breaking, it all came pouring out. He won't leave me alone, she sobbed. I thought when the divorce was final, I'd be free. I got a restraining order, moved in with my sister, changed my number. But he always finds me. He waits at the bus stop. He follows me to work. He shows up outside Rosa's apartment at 2 a.m. and just sits in his car, watching. Lorenzo's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Have you tried to report him? Yes. The word came out like a cry of frustration. I tried. I went to his station. You know what they said? They said Derek was a good officer, that I was exaggerating because I was bitter. One of them told me I should be grateful he wanted to stay in my life. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He is the police, Mr. Duca. He is the law. Who do you call when the person hurting you wears a badge? What about the restraining order? It expired. I tried to renew it, but Derek brought an expensive lawyer. They said I had no proof of recent harassment. The judge denied it. She wiped at her tears with her sleeve. And even when I had it, he'd find ways to get close without technically violating it. He knows every loophole. What does he want? Maria's laugh was bitter and broken. Me back. He thinks I'm his property. He says I destroyed his reputation by divorcing him, made him look weak. He says if he can't have me, he'll make sure I'm too scared to have a life without him. She looked at Lorenzo with desperate eyes. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm terrified every time I leave the house. And I can't quit this job because I need the money. But I'm so scared he's going to cause trouble here and you'll fire me. Stop. Lorenzo's voice cut through her panic. I am not going to fire you. Maria, listen to me very carefully. He leaned forward, his voice steady and sure. You work in my house. You are under my protection. That means something. Do you understand? Mr. Duca, you can't fight the police. I'm not fighting the police. I'm protecting someone who works for me from a man who is abusing his power. He stood and walked to the window. Derek Mitchell thinks he's untouchable because of that badge. He thinks he can terrorize you because you have nowhere to turn. I don't, Maria said quietly. I have nowhere to turn. Lorenzo turned back to her. Yes, you do. You have here. You have me. Why? The question was small and confused. Why would you help me? I'm just a maid. Because what he's doing is wrong, Lorenzo said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. And because I don't let people get hurt on my watch. You don't understand. His friends, his uncle is a deputy chief. If you try anything, Maria. Lorenzo moved back to his chair and looked directly into her eyes. I am going to tell you something, and I need you to believe me. Derek Mitchell will never touch you again. I don't make promises I can't keep. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. How can you promise that? Because, Lorenzo said quietly, I'm very good at what I do. What if he retaliates? What if he comes after you? Let me worry about that. All I need from you is to keep coming to work. Act normal. Can you do that? You want me to just pretend everything's fine? For now, yes. I know it's hard, but I need you to trust me. He stood, pulled a business card from his desk and wrote on the back. This is my private cell number. If Mitchell approaches you, if you feel unsafe, if anything happens, you call me immediately. Day or night, understand? Maria took the card with shaking hands. Mr. Duca, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He opened the office door for her. Just know that you're not alone anymore. After she left, Lorenzo watched her walk back toward the kitchen. Her shoulders were still tense, but something had shifted. She had told someone. She had asked for help, and Lorenzo Duca intended to deliver. He picked up his phone. "Tony, we're moving to the next phase. I want everything on Mitchell by this afternoon, and I mean everything." Frank Russo arrived at the mansion at 3 p.m., walking into Lorenzo's study with the confidence of a man who'd been the family's consigliere for 20 years. He was 60, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and had kept the Duca organization out of federal prison more times than anyone could count. "You want to go after a cop?" Frank said without preamble. "Have you lost your mind?" "Good afternoon to you too, Frank." Lorenzo poured them both a scotch. "And I don't want to. I have to." "No, you don't." Frank took the glass. "You want to. There's a difference. Walk me through this." Lorenzo handed him the manila folder. Frank opened it, studying Derek Mitchell's photograph with a practiced eye. Cop, young, connected. Frank looked up. His uncle's a deputy chief, Vincent Mitchell. 30 years on the force, runs the 14th and 18th districts. Jesus, Lorenzo. Frank tossed the folder on the desk. "You're talking about touching someone in a family that bleeds blue. You know what that means? I understand that he's been stalking and assaulting one of my employees." "Your maid," Frank clarified. "Not your daughter, not your sister. A maid you've known for 3 months. Does that matter? In terms of risk assessment? Yes, it absolutely matters." Frank leaned forward. "If we move on this cop and something happens, the entire Chicago PD will be on our necks. They'll investigate every business, every associate, every transaction. They will want blood. I'm aware of the risks." "Are you?" Frank's voice rose slightly. "We've worked hard to keep a low profile. We don't make headlines. We operate in the shadows. This," he gestured at the folder, "is stepping into the light and painting a target on our backs." "So I should do nothing? Let him keep terrorizing her?" "I'm saying you need to think strategically, not emotionally." Frank finally took a sip of his scotch. "What's the end game? You scare him off? He'll come back with friends. You hurt him? The heat will be incredible. You eliminate him." Frank shook his head. "That's a war we can't win." Lorenzo turned his laptop around so Frank could see the screen. "Watch this." He played the footage of Mitchell backing Maria against the gate, his hand on her throat. Frank watched in silence. When it ended, his expression had changed, but his voice remained cautious. "It's bad. I'm not saying it isn't. But Lorenzo, think about what you're risking. Think about everyone who depends on this organization staying off the radar." "I am thinking about them." Lorenzo closed the laptop. "I'm thinking if word gets out that someone can hurt people under my protection without consequences, we look weak. This isn't some rival family. This is law enforcement. This is a criminal with a badge. I'm not going to eliminate him, Frank." "Then what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. That's why you're here. To help me figure out how to handle this without bringing the kind of heat you're worried about." Frank was quiet for a long moment. "You're really not going to let this go, are you? Would you? If someone was hurting someone you'd sworn to protect." Frank sighed heavily. "Show me everything you have." For the next hour, Lorenzo walked Frank through the evidence, the surveillance, the background check, Maria's story. Frank listened, asked questions, made notes. "His uncle's the real problem," Frank finally said. "Vincent Mitchell has juice. He's friends with the mayor, the superintendent. If we go after Derek and the uncle gets involved, we're talking institutional protection. So how do we neutralize that?" "Wrong question." Frank tapped his pen. "The question is how to make sure we never have to. We don't touch Derek Mitchell, not physically." Frank's eyes gleamed. "We make him radioactive. We make it so his own department wants nothing to do with him." Lorenzo felt a spark of understanding. "Go on. Every cop has enemies, people they've crossed, arrests they've botched. We find his vulnerabilities, not to hit him, but to expose him. We let the system eat its own. Internal affairs, the media, anyone with a grudge." Frank smiled coldly. "We don't need to destroy Derek Mitchell, Lorenzo. We need to destroy his credibility, strip away his protection, and leave him as just another civilian with anger issues and a history of domestic violence." Lorenzo's mind raced. He pulled up the footage of Maria's terrified face. How long would that take? Weeks, maybe a month. These things have to look natural. Maria doesn't have a month, Lorenzo said quietly. He's escalating. Then we put protection on her, quietly. He's a cop. He's trained to notice. Frank stood. There's another option. Offer her money. Set her up somewhere far away. New identity, new life. Lorenzo shook his head immediately. She has a sister here, a life. Why should she have to run? Because it's safer, Frank said bluntly. For her and for us. Lorenzo looked at the frozen image on his screen. Who do you call when the person hurting you wears a badge? No one. Unless someone outside the system decided to even the scales. We're not sending her away, Lorenzo said finally. And we're not going to physically touch Mitchell. You're right, the risk is too high. Relief crossed Frank's face. Good. But we are going to destroy him, Lorenzo continued. Carefully, methodically, we're going to remove every piece of armor that makes him feel untouchable. His badge, his reputation, his connections. He met Frank's eyes. We won't touch him, Frank. We'll remove his armor first, then we'll let him fall. Frank studied him, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this my way. Controlled, no emotional decisions. Agreed. And if the heat gets too intense, we pull back. Deal. They shook on it. Two men in the shadows plotting the downfall of a man who hid in the light. Tony Messina understood that information was currency, and over the next 48 hours, he was about to make Lorenzo Duca a very rich man. We start with the money, Tony said, spreading documents across the conference table in the secure basement office. Marco sat at his laptop, screens glowing. Frank Russo observed from a corner. Mitchell's official salary is $62,000 a year, Tony continued. He rents in Lincoln Park, drives a 2023 Dodge Charger, eats out at expensive places. He's living way above his means. Marco pulled up bank statements. Regular deposits match his paychecks. But look at this. He highlighted several cash deposits. $2,000 here, $30,500 here, $1,500. All cash, irregular intervals, totaling $43,000 over the last year. How'd you get his bank records? Frank asked. Marco grinned. His bank has terrible cybersecurity. Where's the cash from? Lorenzo asked. That's the fun part, Tony said. My CI in the 14th district says Mitchell's been running a side hustle. Traffic stops in nice neighborhoods. Finds something, offers to make it go away for cash. Sometimes works with his partner, Officer Ryan Webb. Lorenzo felt disgust curl in his stomach. He's shaking people down. Yep, and it gets better. Tony slid a photograph across the table, showing Derek Mitchell at an outdoor table with 3 other men. That's Jimmy Kowalski, Frank said, identifying one of the men. Runs protection rackets on the south side. Mitchell drinks with him twice a month, Tony confirmed. My guy says they have an arrangement. Mitchell tips Kowalski off about raids, helps him move product. In exchange, Kowalski gives him cash and muscle. So our cop is crooked, Lorenzo said. What else? Marco took over. I dug into his arrest record. 2 years ago, Mitchell arrested a guy named Carlos Mendez for drug possession. Mendez claimed Mitchell planted the drugs. Mendez's girlfriend filed a complaint saying Mitchell sexually harassed her during the arrest. The complaint went to Internal Affairs. Marco pulled up a document. Guess who investigated it? His uncle's best friend, Lieutenant Paul Brennan. Complaint deemed unfounded. Case closed. So there's a pattern of covering for him. There's a whole network, Marco corrected, pulling up a web diagram with Mitchell at the center, connected to 8 other officers. They all have complaints against them, excessive force, misconduct, harassment, and every single complaint was dismissed or buried. They protect each other. This is good, Frank said. This is the kind of thing Internal Affairs would care about if it got to the right people. There's more, Tony said. Remember his partner, Ryan Webb. He has a gambling problem, owes money to 3 bookies. One of them told me, off the record, that Webb's been bragging about how he and Mitchell are untouchable because of Uncle Vincent. Lorenzo absorbed it all. Mitchell wasn't just an abusive ex-husband. He was a corrupt cop, protected by family and a network of dirty officers. What about the uncle? Lorenzo asked. Vincent Mitchell. He's clean as far as I can tell, Tony said. Real Boy Scout type. Or he's better at hiding his dirt. Lorenzo stood studying the evidence. Financial records, photos with criminals, a pattern of disappearing complaints. This is good work, he said, but it's not enough. If we drop this on IA now, they'll investigate, but his friends could make it go away. So what do we need? Marco asked. We need something undeniable, Lorenzo said. Something so bad that even his uncle can't cover for him. Something that forces the department to act. He thought of Maria's tear-stained face. We need to find his other victims. We need to prove this isn't an isolated incident, to show a pattern so clear that anyone who tries to cover for him becomes complicit. I'll put feelers out, Tony nodded. And keep digging into his finances, Lorenzo added. Build a timeline. If he's been dirty for 2 years, prove it month by month. Surveillance? Marco asked. Absolutely. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he meets. Lorenzo's voice hardened. Derek Mitchell thinks that badge makes him immune. We're going to document every crime, every shakedown, every abuse of power. And when we're done, we're going to hand it to people who can't ignore it. Remember our agreement, Frank cautioned. Careful, no direct action. I haven't forgotten, Lorenzo replied. This isn't about revenge. It's about removing a predator from power by letting the system he abused turn against him. Tony gathered the files. Give me 3 more days. I'll have enough to bury him. You've got 2, Lorenzo said. Maria is scared enough. I don't want to drag this out. Maria found out on the 3rd day. She was cleaning when she heard voices from Lorenzo's study. The door was ajar. She shouldn't have listened, but when she heard Derek's name, she froze. Financial records show consistent deposits from shakedowns, she heard Tony say. And we've got photos of him meeting with Jimmy Kowalski. Good, Lorenzo replied. What about other victims? Panic seized her. She dropped her supplies and ran toward the kitchen, where Mrs. Chun saw her face and grabbed her. Honey, what's wrong? He's investigating Derek, Maria gasped. Mr. Duca is investigating him. He can't. Derek will know. Mrs. Chun's expression shifted. Come with me. She led Maria to Lorenzo's study and knocked. When Lorenzo saw Maria's tear-stained face, he immediately softened. Leave us, he told Tony. Mrs. Chun squeezed Maria's shoulder and closed the door behind her. Lorenzo guided Maria to a chair, but she was too agitated to sit. You can't do this, she said, her voice shaking. Please, Mr. Duca, stop looking into Derek. He'll find out. He has friends everywhere. He'll know it's because of me. Maria, he'll kill me. You don't know what he's like when he's angry. Maria, Lorenzo stepped closer, not touching her but compelling her to look at him. Breathe. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Look at me, he said firmly. Look at me and breathe. The calm certainty in his voice cut through her panic. She took a shuddering breath. Good, he said, again. The panic began to recede. Now sit, he said gently. This time, she sank into the chair. How much did you hear? He asked. Enough. You're investigating his finances, looking for other victims. Mr. Duca, if he finds out, he won't. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Lorenzo's voice was absolute. We're being very careful. Derek Mitchell won't know anyone is looking until it's too late. You don't understand how connected he is. His uncle. I know. And I know Derek has friends who cover for him. Maria, I wouldn't have started this if I couldn't finish it safely. There is no safe. She stood again, pacing. Every time I've tried to get help, it's made things worse. When I filed the restraining order, he followed me for 2 weeks straight. When I complained, he showed up at my sister's apartment that night. He always escalates. That's because before, you were alone, Lorenzo said quietly. She stopped pacing. You were alone, fighting a system designed to protect him. But you're not alone anymore. He stood, and for the first time, she saw something personal in his eyes. You're under my protection now. That means something. But why? The question burst out of her. I'm nobody. Why would you risk? Because what he's doing is wrong, Lorenzo said simply. Because you work in my house, which makes you my responsibility. And because He paused. I don't let people get hurt on my watch. Maria wanted to believe him so badly it ached, but fear was a living thing inside her. You don't know what you're starting, she whispered. Yes, I do. He stood before her, his gaze no longer that of an employer, but of a protector. Maria, listen to me. Derek Mitchell will not touch you again. I promise you that. You can't promise that. I don't make promises I can't keep. The certainty in his voice cracked something inside her. She had carried this fear alone for so long, and here was this dangerous man telling her she didn't have to carry it anymore. What if you're wrong? She asked, her voice barely audible. I'm not. But what if... Maria, he waited until she met his eyes. Have I lied to you yet? She thought about it. He had promised she wouldn't lose her job. He had promised to look into Derek. He had given her his private number. No, she admitted. Then trust me now. He seemed to understand her hesitation. He walked to his desk and pulled out a different card. This is the number for a security company I trust, he said. If you feel unsafe anywhere, you call this number and give your name. Someone will be there in minutes. No explanation needed. Maria took the card with trembling fingers. Why are you doing all this? Lorenzo was quiet for a moment. Because nobody should have to live the way you've been living, he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Looking over your shoulder, afraid to go home. You deserve better than that, Maria, and I'm going to make sure you get it. Tears spilled down her cheeks again, but this time they felt different. Something dangerously close to hope. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. What if this makes everything worse? It won't. He won't touch you again, Maria. That's a promise. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw he meant every word. This wasn't just business. This was personal. Okay, she said finally, the word a breath. Okay, I trust you. Lorenzo nodded, a flicker of satisfaction on his face. Good. Now go home. Act normal. Let me worry about Derek Mitchell. As Maria left, the fear was still there, but for the first time in months, it wasn't alone. It was joined by something new and fragile. Hope. Lorenzo moved like a chess master. Over the next 48 hours, he made his opening moves. The first piece fell Tuesday morning. Officer Ryan Webb, Derek Mitchell's partner, was met by 2 internal affairs investigators in the station parking lot. Officer Webb, the lead investigator, said, "We need to talk about some financial irregularities." By 8:15 a.m., Webb was in an interrogation room, sweating as they laid out bank records detailing unexplained deposits matching his traffic stops. Someone had anonymously sent the records to IA. By noon, Webb had turned on Derek Mitchell in exchange for a lighter punishment. Lorenzo received a text at 12:47 p.m. First domino down, Webb is singing. The second piece fell that evening. Marco, using encrypted networks, uploaded a curated package of information to whistleblower websites and Reddit communities. The post read, Chicago PD Officer Derek Mitchell, badge number 4729, $43,000 in unexplained cash deposits, regular meetings with known criminal Jimmy Kowalski, multiple domestic violence complaints mysteriously dismissed. Someone should ask why. Attached were partially redacted bank statements, photos of Mitchell with Kowalski, and public records of the dismissed complaints. By midnight, the post had thousands of upvotes. Local news outlets were tagged. A reporter from the Tribune started making calls. The third piece fell Wednesday afternoon. Jimmy Kowalski was arrested outside his gym. The charges: possession with intent to distribute, weapons violations, conspiracy. The arrest stemmed from a single anonymous phone call Lorenzo had made to a clean, ambitious federal prosecutor who had been trying to nail Kowalski for years. Lorenzo simply pointed him toward a warehouse. The prosecutor checked and found enough evidence to put Kowalski away for a decade. He never questioned the tip. With Kowalski in custody, Derek Mitchell had lost his criminal backup, a source of income, and his muscle. By Wednesday evening, Derek Mitchell felt the ground shifting. He scrolled through the Reddit posts, his jaw clenching. His phone buzzed. It was Ryan Webb. "What the hell did you tell IA?" Derek demanded. "I'm sorry, man. They had everything. You gave me up." "I had to." Derek hung up, shaking with rage. Someone was coming after him, someone with resources. His phone buzzed again. It was his uncle. "My office, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Vincent Mitchell's voice was ice. "Uncle Vince, I can..." 8 a.m. The line went dead. Derek threw his phone against the wall. It shattered. Everything was falling apart. He thought about Maria, about her job at the Duca mansion. A cold suspicion began to form. Thursday morning, Lorenzo received a full report. IA has formally opened an investigation into Mitchell, Tony said. Webb's statement gave them probable cause. Vincent Mitchell is distancing himself publicly. Mitchell's been reassigned to desk duty. No badge, no gun. Lorenzo felt a wave of satisfaction. "What about his network?" Frank asked. "Scattering like rats," Tony reported. "Nobody wants to be associated with him now." Marco looked up from his laptop. "The media is circling. 3 local news sites have picked up the story. One's calling him Chicago's dirty cop problem." Lorenzo stood at the window. "He's going to retaliate," Frank warned. "Men like Mitchell lash out when they're cornered." "I know." Lorenzo turned back. "Which is why we move faster." Marco pulled up new footage. "He's escalating his surveillance on Maria. He sat outside her apartment for 3 hours yesterday." Lorenzo's anger flared. "Tony, contact every news outlet covering the story. Feed them more. Give them the restraining order, the other complaints. Make them understand this isn't just about corruption. It's about a violent man using his badge to terrorize people. That could expose Maria," Frank warned. "We'll keep her name anonymous." Lorenzo's voice was firm. "Derek Mitchell needs to become so toxic that even thinking about helping him is career suicide. And increase security around Maria," Lorenzo added. "If Mitchell's going to break, he'll do it soon. I want eyes on her everywhere." Cornered animals were dangerous, and Derek Mitchell had just been backed into a very small corner. Friday morning at 6 a.m., Chicago woke to a storm. The Tribune's front page: Chicago Cops' Dark Secret, Years of Abuse, Corruption, and Cover-Ups Exposed. Channel 7 led their broadcast with it. The Sun-Times went harder. Badge of Dishonor: How Derek Mitchell Used Police Power to Terrorize Women. They all dropped at once, a coordinated, devastating blow. Lorenzo had made sure of it. In the Duca mansion kitchen, Maria stood frozen, staring at the television. They showed Derek's police photo next to court documents and the infamous picture with Kowalski. "Sources tell us Officer Mitchell deposited over $40,000 in unexplained cash," the reporter said. Additionally, multiple women have come forward anonymously to describe a pattern of harassment, including an ex-wife who obtained a restraining order. They were talking about her, but her name was safe. Lorenzo had kept his promise. The CPD spokesperson read a statement. "The allegations are being taken very seriously. Officer Mitchell has been placed on administrative leave." Maria felt tears stream down her face, but they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. By 8 a.m., the story had gone viral. Chicago PD was trending. At the 14th District, Mitchell's colleagues were in full panic. "This is a disaster," one sergeant muttered. "Nobody talked to reporters. Nobody defend Mitchell. He's radioactive." The union rep who planned to defend him suddenly had scheduling conflicts. At City Hall, Deputy Chief Vincent Mitchell sat with his head in his hands. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. His nephew had destroyed his reputation. He'd known Derek had problems, but family loyalty had made him blind. Now that loyalty was costing him everything. By noon, the story was national news. CNN, MSNBC. Derek Mitchell became the poster child for systemic failures in law enforcement. At 2:17 p.m., Lorenzo got the call. "He's been formally suspended without pay," Tony reported. "Criminal investigation. The FBI is getting involved. That meeting with Kowalski triggered federal interest. They're looking into corruption, racketeering, civil rights violations. They're going to tear his life apart." It had worked. "What about his precinct?" Frank asked. "Mass panic," Tony confirmed. 3 of his buddies have already lawyered up. Marco pulled up the news coverage. Derek Mitchell's face was everywhere. next to words like corrupt, abuser, disgrace. "How's Maria?" Frank asked. "She's processing," Lorenzo said simply. He had seen her earlier, watching the news, whispering, "Thank you." "The floodgates have opened," Marco said. "People who were too scared to speak up before are telling their stories now." "The thing about predators," Frank observed quietly, "is they never have just one victim." At 4 p.m., Maria knocked on Lorenzo's study door. She entered slowly, but when she met his eyes, the constant fear was beginning to fade, replaced by something like peace. "I watched the news," she said softly. "They're saying he's going to be arrested. Is it really over?" "Not yet," Lorenzo said. "But we're close. He can't hurt you anymore, Maria. He has no badge, no authority, no protection. He's just a man now." She nodded, fresh tears spilling. I never imagined anyone could actually stop him." "You're safe now," Lorenzo said firmly. She stepped forward and hugged him, a quick, impulsive gesture, then pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "It's fine," Lorenzo said gently. After she left, he returned to the window. Tomorrow would bring the final act. Derek Mitchell had been drinking since noon. His apartment was a wreck. By 6 p.m., Saturday evening, rage had burned through the alcohol, leaving cold desperation. This was Maria's fault. She had destroyed his life. He pulled on a jacket and headed for the door. No badge, no gun, but he didn't need them. He just needed to make her understand. What Derek didn't know was that Lorenzo was 3 steps ahead. 2 blocks from Maria's building, an unmarked van sat in a laundromat parking lot. Inside, Tony and Marco monitored the street. "Movement," Marco said. "Blue sedan." Tony squinted at the screen. "That's him." He picked up his phone. "He's moving. Get ready." 4 blocks away, Detectives Sarah Chen and Mike Torres sat in their own unmarked car. They were good cops, carefully selected by Lorenzo's source. "Heads up," Sarah said. "Target is inbound." In his security room, Lorenzo watched the feeds. Everything was in place. "He's been watching her building for 3 days," Lorenzo said calmly to Frank. "Cornered predators always go back to their victims. He'll show." At 6:27 p.m., Derek parked across from Maria's building. He saw the light in her second-floor window. She was home. He got out and crossed the street. He climbed the stairs and pounded on the door. "Maria, I know you're in there." Inside, Maria backed away, phone clutched in her hand. Her sister Rosa stood in front of her. "Go away, Derek," Rosa shouted. "We're calling the police." "I am the police," he roared, pounding harder. "Open this door." In the van, Tony spoke into his radio. "He's at the door, making threats. Officers, move in." "Copy that," Sarah responded. 2 minutes out. Derek kept pounding. "You ruined my life. You took it all." He rattled the doorknob violently. "I will break this door down, Maria." "Derek Mitchell." Sarah Chen's voice cut through his rage like a blade. She stood at the top of the stairs with her partner, badges visible. "Step away from the door, now." Derek spun around. "You don't understand, I understand you're violating a harassment order and making terroristic threats," Sarah interrupted. "Hands where I can see them." "There's no restraining order. It expired." "A new one was filed this morning," Mike Torres said, blocking his escape. "Emergency protective order. You were served by email." Derek's face went white. "I never got—" "Hands behind your back," Sarah ordered. "This is bullshit. I'm a cop." "You were a cop," Mike corrected, grabbing Derek's arm. "Right now, you're just a criminal." Derek tried to pull away, the mistake they were waiting for. "Resisting arrest," Sarah said calmly, and both detectives moved in. Within seconds, he was cuffed against the wall. And that's when the news crews arrived. Lorenzo had made another anonymous tip. Channel 7's camera caught Derek being walked out in handcuffs, screaming obscenities. The Sun-Times photographer captured the perfect shot. Derek Mitchell, former officer, face twisted with rage and humiliation. The city watched a fallen cop's final, pathetic moment. Social media erupted. In the security room, Lorenzo watched with quiet satisfaction. "It's done," Frank said. "Not quite," Lorenzo replied, pulling out his phone. At Maria's apartment, she sat on the couch, crying with relief. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lorenzo. "It's over. He can't hurt you anymore." She read it and felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Safe. Monday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. Maria came to work, and for the first time in months, she didn't check over her shoulder. Derek Mitchell was in Cook County Jail, denied bail. His life as he knew it was over, and Maria Lopez could finally breathe. Mrs. Chun found her in the kitchen, a genuine smile on her face. "He wants to see you," she said gently. Maria went to Lorenzo's study. He stood by the window, then turned as she entered. "Sit down, Maria." His tone was warm. "We need to talk about your living situation." Maria's stomach dropped. "I know Rosa's apartment isn't ideal, but I'm saving." "Maria," his voice was gentle, "I'm asking you to consider an alternative." He opened an envelope and set a set of keys on the desk. "What are these?" she asked. "Keys to an apartment in Lincoln Park. 2 bedrooms, secure building, 24-hour security." He slid the keys toward her. "It's yours, if you want it." Maria stared at them. "Mr. Duca, I can't afford." "It's already paid for, 3 years up front." He pulled out papers. "The lease is under a property management company I own. Your name is nowhere on public record. He wouldn't be able to find you." "I don't understand." "You need a fresh start," Lorenzo said simply. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Derek Mitchell's shadow doesn't reach. Rosa is welcome too." Tears filled Maria's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you deserve to feel safe in your own home. You've spent too long looking over your shoulder." His voice softened. "Because no one in this house gets hurt. Ever. That includes after they leave for the day." The tears spilled over. "I can't accept this. It's too much. It's already done." Lorenzo's tone was final, but not unkind. "The apartment is there. I hope you'll take it." He pulled out another document. "I've also arranged for private security. You won't even notice them, but they'll be there, just for a few months." Maria pressed her hands to her face, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to. You came to work for me, you did your job well. When I learned someone was hurting you, it became my responsibility to fix it. But you've already given me my life back. And now I'm giving you the space to build a new one. You've been surviving for so long, Maria. It's time to start living." And she cried then, for the fear she'd carried, for the relief, for the overwhelming kindness of this man. "I don't know how to thank you," she said finally. "Then don't." Lorenzo pushed the keys closer. "Just take the apartment. Be safe. Be happy. That's all the thanks I need." Maria picked up the keys, their weight feeling like freedom. "Rosa will be thrilled." "Good. Take the rest of the day off. Go see the place. Get what you need. Mrs. Chun has a company card." "Mr. Duca, I can't." "Maria, please let me do this." She nodded, clutching the keys. "Thank you for everything, for believing me, for protecting me, for—" Her voice broke. "For caring." "Of course I cared," Lorenzo said as if it were obvious. "You work in my house. That makes you family, in a way. And I protect my family." Maria moved to the door, then paused and turned back. "Mr. Duca, when I first met you, I thought you were scary. The rumors. But you're the kindest person I've ever met. You saved my life." Lorenzo was quiet for a moment. "I'm not a good man, Maria. Don't mistake what I did for you as a sign of goodness. I have my codes, my lines. Derek Mitchell crossed one. Still," she said softly, "thank you." After she left, Lorenzo sat alone. His phone buzzed. A text from Tony. "Mitchell formally charged. DA is pushing for maximum sentence. Looks like 15-20 years." Lorenzo allowed himself a small smile. Justice delivered through untraceable channels. He looked out at Chicago. Somewhere, Maria Lopez was starting a new life. and Derek Mitchell would rot in a cell, understanding too late that some people, no matter how small they seemed, were under a protection he could never penetrate. 1 week later, Chicago was still talking. Former officer Derek Mitchell appeared in court today, facing 17 criminal charges. The evening news anchor reported. What's remarkable, the co-host added, is how quickly everything unraveled. Some analysts believe there was coordination behind the scenes, an unseen hand ensuring Mitchell's crimes couldn't be ignored. The speculation was rampant, but no one could trace it back to a source. That was the point. At the 14th District, 3 more officers had been suspended. Deputy Chief Vincent Mitchell had taken early retirement. The blue wall of silence had cracks. In Lincoln Park, Maria Lopez stood in her new apartment, the morning sun streaming through the windows. It was clean, new, safe. At 7:30 a.m., she left and walked to the bus stop. No one followed her. For the first time in over a year, she walked through Chicago without looking over her shoulder. She was free. At the Duca mansion, Lorenzo stood on his private balcony. His phone buzzed, a text from Tony. Mitchell's lawyer tried for a plea deal. DA said no, they want to make an example of him. Lorenzo smiled faintly. Admiring your work? Frank Russo asked, stepping onto the balcony. Ensuring it's complete, Lorenzo corrected. The city's buzzing, Frank said. Everyone wants to know who took down the untouchable cop. Let them wonder. You know this sets a precedent, Frank noted. The message that you protect your people. Good. They stood in silence, watching the city wake up. The news is calling it divine intervention, Frank said. An act of justice that came out of nowhere. Not nowhere, Lorenzo said quietly. It came from someone who refused to accept that badges make people untouchable. Mrs. Chun poked her head out. Maria just arrived. She wanted me to tell you she's settled in and thanks you again. How does she seem? Lorenzo asked. Happy. Mrs. Chun smiled warmly. Genuinely happy. After she left, Lorenzo turned back to the city. Beneath the surface, currents of power and corruption flowed. But sometimes, the shadows pushed back. Lorenzo Duca had sent a message to Chicago. The message was simple but absolute. Touch what's mine, and even the law won't protect you. He had shown that predators could be exposed no matter how powerful they seemed. Most importantly, he'd shown one terrified woman that she didn't have to face her demons alone. Lorenzo finished his coffee and returned to his study. There was work to do, an empire to maintain. But for this moment, he allowed himself satisfaction. Maria Lopez was safe. Derek Mitchell was destroyed. And Chicago would remember, even if they didn't understand, that some people had lines you simply did not cross. The city whispered about unseen hands and mysterious justice. Lorenzo Duca simply got back to work. Shadows, after all, don't need recognition. They just need to keep protecting what matters.